หันทะมยัง อาหานาหาปานาสติปัฏฐังคันหามัสเสอานาปานาสติภิกขเวภาวิตาภาหุลิกัตตาดูก่อนภิกษุทั้งหลายอานาปานาสติท่านบุคคลเจริญแล้ว
Years ago, I discovered I could watch my own breath. I went to a meditation class, and the thought had never really occurred to me that my breath was something that could help me apart from keeping me alive. And this class had a profound effect on me. And I noticed that after a while, I just started to feel a lot better, and that breathing mindfulness, the simple attention to the breath as it goes in and out of the body, was doing me a lot of good. At that time, it was considered very unusual, and people thought I was very eccentric to be doing this practice. But after a while, I noticed that a lot of other people started to do breathing mindfulness in various forms. And I became interested in thinking, well, why are there so many varieties and almost species of breathing mindfulness? The Buddha practiced breathing mindfulness himself, particularly after his enlightenment. He regarded it as his sublime practice. I feel it's been Buddhism's great gift to the world because so many people's lives have been transformed simply by watching the breath, as mine was. So I wrote this book because I felt that sometimes people were critical of other traditions and said they weren't purely Buddhist or they weren't the right way or that their way was the only way. And I felt, well, when you do a meditation, you always feel that your way is the only way. It's a very natural phenomenon. But it seemed to me more interesting to see all of these traditions as being right ways of different kinds. So that's really the theme of the book, to look at all the varieties of breathing mindfulness that are around now and try and trace their origins and see the context of their growth and how they developed. The traditions I cover are very varied. Some are from Thailand, so I look quite a lot at the forest tradition and all the very diverse characters, very strong personalities, and very deep meditators, particularly from northeast Thailand. There are other kinds of meditation, though. In the 19th century, a number of new methods were developed, particularly in Burma, and they were designed specifically for the modern practitioner. So they were considered more direct or more immediate, and they were also more concerned with what we call vipassana, clear seeing. So they have a very different style and flavour. Some methods mix both. I'd say each one has come from a very distinguished and highly experienced practitioner. And I feel that it's very important that we value them all and see that what suits us may not suit another person, and also to enjoy the fact that there is so much variety in this method. I also look at the Burmese teachers and the origins of what we call the insight movement emerged. And I found this fascinating. I really didn't know very much about the history of how it emerged. And seeing the teachers involved like Lady Sayadaw, U Ba Khin, Mahasi Sayadaw, Goenka, seeing how all these teachers situated themselves in their own environment, but also saw a need for change in the modern world. And they adapted methods, but all of them always remained true to their own roots and to their own background. They didn't reject a lot of things which are often rejected by modern Buddhists. They saw themselves as working within, if you like, a forest that was covered with very dense and rich mycelial networks and nourishment. And they know their dependency on that. I also look at Ayakima, who's always been a favorite of mine, partly because she's a woman, and there have been historically very few records about women practitioners. There have been many, I'm sure, but they haven't tended to have their biographies written. And she's a new kind of practitioner because she's a woman who did not grow up as a Buddhist, but who found the teachings for herself. So I very much enjoyed looking at her methods and talking to Lee Bracington, who is involved with teaching Ayakima's methods. And I also look a little bit at Venerable Buddhadasa, and I look at my own teacher, Buman Punyatero, who is still alive. There's also the Pauk method, which is very interesting because it's a samatha method within Burma that is very, very popular. And I find that particularly interesting because there tended to be a rather negative light put on some samatha practices. But Pauk's teachings have been very popular and have been very widely disseminated in the international community. So the intention of the book is really to look at all these different traditions and try and appreciate each one for its own merits and its own history. The method I do is one which is nearly lost now in Thailand itself, where it came from, but which was introduced to the West in the 1960s, and it flourishes, funnily enough, in the West. And that's samatha breathing mindfulness, which is bringing the mind to calm and then in the hope of attaining jhana and of finding wisdom through that. There is a tendency for different forms of Buddhism to criticize other forms. I think this is very natural. It's like your own football team is always going to be better than somebody else's. But I hope also that this book will help people to take a broader perspective and to see, isn't it wonderful that we have so many teams and that we have so many varieties? And I would very much like this book to contribute to that discussion. While I was working on it, I went to the Cairngorms and I walked in some ancient woodlands. And the lady who was showing us round explained that in order for a really good ecological environment, you need to have multiple species because that encourages the insects, the birds, and various kinds of forms of wildlife to flourish. And I thought, well, that's a wonderful image for the varieties of breathing mindfulness, because I feel that there are many different kinds of people who practice. Some are suited to certain types of meditation, some need calm, some need insight. But that overall, it's like a kind of dense woodland where we can all support each other. So that was really the motivation for writing this book. And I hope you enjoy reading about your own meditation, if it's in there, and about others. And if you don't know about the subject at all, I hope it gives you some sort of sense of the great richness and the wonderful ancient lineages that we are very lucky to have access to today. So I hope anybody who is interested in the subject will enjoy reading this book and getting a sense of how the Buddha planted the seeds for all these varied teachings to take root and to flourish.